You inherit nothing, my sister said, standing in my father's hospital room before his body was even cold. Dad already signed everything over to me last week. You can go now. My name is Renata Cole, and I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened next. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't grieving. I was more than I'd ever grieved anything in my life, but because some part of me already knew. I'd known for years that my sister Devora had been circling our father like a bird waiting for something to die. My father, Walton Cole, built a modest but comfortable life running a hardware supply company in a town called Ashfield Creek. Nothing glamorous. A house, some land, a business worth maybe $800,000 if you sold everything at once. Devora had spent the last 3 years helping him with paperwork, driving him to appointments, sitting in on meetings with his lawyer that I was never invited to. I lived 2 states away. I called every Sunday. I visited when I could, which wasn't often enough. Work, kids, the ordinary excuses that feel unforgivable the moment someone dies. When he passed, Devora didn't call me. My father's neighbor did, a woman named Priscilla who'd known us since we were children, who thought it was strange that Devora hadn't picked up the phone to tell her own sister their father was gone. By the time I arrived at the hospital, Devora was already holding a folder. Signed, notarized, dated 11 days before his death. He wanted it this way, she told me, not quite meeting my eyes. What she didn't know was that I'd worked in estate law for 6 years before switching careers. And something in that folder was wrong the moment I saw the signature page. I asked to see the signature page more closely. Devora hesitated, just a half second too long, before handing me the folder. The signature was my father's, no question. Shaky, but his. What caught my attention wasn't the signature. It was the notary stamp beneath it. I recognized the name. Harmon Pruitt. A notary my father had used exactly once, 3 years earlier, for a completely unrelated document, a small business loan renewal. I remembered it because I'd been visiting that week and Dad had complained about driving 40 minutes out of his way because his usual notary, a woman named Odalise Farrow who worked 2 blocks from his house, was on vacation. Why would a dying man, 11 days before his death, weak enough that Devora herself told the hospital staff he could barely hold a pen, drive 40 minutes to use a notary he'd used exactly once in his life, when his regular one was 2 blocks away? I didn't say any of this to Devora. Not yet. I need some air, I told her, and stepped into the hallway, where I called Priscilla, our father's neighbor. Priscilla, I said, keeping my voice as even as I could manage. Did Dad leave the house at all in the last 2 weeks? Any car rides, appointments, anything? There was a long pause on the other end. Renata, honey, your father couldn't get out of bed the last 2 weeks. Devora hired a hospice nurse. He didn't go anywhere. I looked back through the glass door at my sister, sitting calmly beside our father's body, holding a document that claimed he'd traveled 40 minutes to sign it. I didn't confront Devora at the hospital. I've thought about that decision 100 times since, whether I should have said something right there, in front of the nurses, in front of our father's body. But some instinct told me that whatever this was, I needed proof before I said a single word. I went home that night, not to my father's house where Devora was staying, but to a motel on the edge of Ashfield Creek. I called Odalise Farrow, the notary 2 blocks from Dad's house, first thing the next morning. I haven't seen your father in over a year, she told me. Last time was for his living will update. Why do you ask? I didn't tell her why. I thanked her and hung up, and then I did something that made my hands shake while I dialed. I called Harmon Pruitt, the notary whose stamp was on the new will. He answered on the second ring, sounding tired, distracted. I told him I was Walton Cole's daughter, asking about a document he'd notarized. Cole. I heard him flipping through something. I don't have a Walton Cole in my log for that date. I felt my stomach drop straight through the floor of that motel room. Are you sure? I asked. Ma'am, I keep a physical logbook, every notarization, every signature, cross-referenced with ID. There's no Walton Cole in here for that week. There's no Walton Cole in here for this entire year. Which meant the stamp on that will, the one Devora was holding, the one that supposedly gave her our father's entire estate, hadn't come from an actual notarization at all. It was fake. I hired a lawyer that same week. Not just any lawyer, Ginevra Okwosa, someone I'd worked alongside briefly during my estate law years, who now specialized in exactly this: contested wills, elder fraud, forged documents. She listened to everything. The 40-minute drive, that never happened. The notary who had no record of my father. The hospice nurse who confirmed he hadn't left his bed in 2 weeks. By the end, she was already taking notes on a legal pad, underlining things twice. This isn't just contestable, she told me. If what you're describing is accurate, this is criminal. Forged notarization, potential elder financial abuse, possibly fraud committed while your father was under hospice care. We're not just fighting for the estate, Renata. We may be looking at charges. I asked her what evidence we'd actually need, since a signature I couldn't disprove and a notary log were compelling, but maybe not enough. That's when she told me about something I hadn't considered, my father's phone records and banking history. If Devora had forged this will herself, or paid someone to help her do it, there would be a trail. A withdrawal to pay off whoever stamped that seal. A search history. A visit to an office supply store for a notary stamp kit, which, Ginevra explained, could be purchased with alarming ease online. No license required to own the physical stamp itself, only to legally use it. We subpoenaed the banking records within 2 weeks. What we found wasn't a payment to a stranger. It was a $4,200 transfer made 9 days before my father's death to a company called Prestige Legal Solutions, a name I didn't recognize, but one Ginevra did, immediately, her face going pale. That's not a law firm, she said quietly. That's a document forgery operation the state's been trying to shut down for 2 years. Prestige Legal Solutions turned out to be run by a man named Corwin Baptiste, who was already under state investigation for producing forged power of attorney documents for at least 3 other families in the region. Devora had found him through an online forum, the kind that promises fast, discreet document services to people desperate enough not to ask too many questions. Ginevra filed everything with the district attorney's office within days. The transfer records, the fake notary stamp, sworn statements from both Odalise and the hospice nurse confirming my father's condition. The DA's office had apparently been building a case against Corwin for months and welcomed the new evidence like a gift. What I hadn't expected was the search of Devora's laptop, obtained through a warrant once the fraud investigation opened. It didn't just contain the email exchange with Corwin negotiating the price of the forged will. It contained something worse, a message she'd sent him 9 days before Dad died, time-stamped at 2:14 a.m. He doesn't have much time left. Can you do it faster? I don't want to deal with a real lawyer finding out. I sat in Ginevra's office and read that message 3 times before I could speak. My sister hadn't just forged a document out of grief-adjacent greed, some moment of weakness after watching our father waste away. She had been planning this, calculating it, rushing it, while he was still alive, while she was sitting beside his hospice bed telling him she loved him. Devora was arrested 2 weeks later on charges of forgery, elder financial exploitation, and fraud. The original, legitimate will, the one our father had actually signed 3 years earlier, splitting everything evenly between us, was reinstated by the court within a month. It's been a little over a year now. My sister took a plea deal, 18 months, most of which she's still serving, plus restitution she'll likely be paying off for the rest of her life. I didn't attend the sentencing. I sent Ginevra in my place and asked her to tell me the outcome afterward, over the phone, because some things you don't need to watch happen in a courtroom to feel the weight of. I sold my father's house last spring. Not because I needed the money, the estate, once split fairly, was more than enough to be comfortable, but because I couldn't picture myself walking through those rooms again without seeing Devora sitting beside his hospice bed, typing that message on her phone while he slept a few feet away. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty. If turning in my own sister, watching her go to prison, was worth an inheritance. And the truth is, it was never about the money. It was about a message time-stamped 2:14 a.m. asking a forger to move faster because our father didn't have much time left. It was about knowing that while I sat 2 states away, grieving him in advance, calling every Sunday, she was counting down the days until she could cash him out. I think about the version of the story where I don't happen to remember a notary's name from 3 years earlier, where I sign whatever's put in front of me because I'm too tired and too sad to look closely. She was counting on that version of me showing up in that hospital room. She miscalculated. So here's what I keep coming back to. If you found out someone in your own family had done something like this to someone you loved, not out of desperation, but out of pure calculated timing, could you forgive them, even after everything? Or does something like this break a family beyond repair, no matter how much time passes?